Power to the truth. This is Margo, your citizen reporter here. It is Saturday, August the 4th, 2018, and I've got a special report that I'm going to share with you tonight, and these are reasons that nothing is going to change with abrupt climate change as far as trying to fix it. The powers that be want the Arctic sea ice to melt, and I think they want it to melt as fast as possible. And it's not just the United States, it's Russia, and lots of other countries are in on this too, because they're valuable resources up in the Arctic, and also once the sea ice melts, then they expect to have a highway through there in the sea. And the U.S. Navy has an Arctic roadmap that they created, and this has been in the works a long time. I found this document. It's a PDF file. It's a 47-page PDF document on the U.S. Navy website. And I've had it on the back burner. I knew it was one that I wanted to present, and it deserves a whole show all to itself. And then I have a couple of videos that I'm going to show as well, just short clips, and it's just more confirmation that these countries, these large powers that be, can't wait for the sea ice to melt. And it's going fast, folks. It's going very, very fast. And I'll do a sea ice update probably tomorrow. So tonight we're going to focus on what the U.S. Navy has in store, and this is their Arctic roadmap for the years 2014 to 2030. So what this means is this has been in the works for a very, very, very long time. This is from the Navy Task Force on Climate Change. This is unclassified. I'm not getting anything top secret from the government. This is on their Navy military website that's open to the public, and I will leave the link below like I always do. And this is from the Department of Navy, Chief of Naval Operations in Washington, from the Pentagon. And here's the introduction. The U.S. Navy recognizes that the opening of the Arctic Ocean has important national security implications, as well as significant impacts on the U.S. Navy's required future capabilities. The national security interests of the United States, an Arctic nation through the state of Alaska, extend into the entire Arctic region. The United States has a history of maritime, homeland security, and homeland defense concerns in the Arctic region, along with a long-standing North American security partnership with Canada. The U.S. Navy, with its long track record of Arctic Ocean operations and exploration, is planning today to address future Arctic region security concerns. The establishment of Navy's Task Force Climate Change and the U.S. Navy's 2009 Arctic Roadmap were important steps gaining a comprehensive, unambiguous understanding of the complex environment of the Arctic region and the many challenges it poses for future operations. Today, the observed changes in the Arctic region climate and the reduced extent of summer sea ice reveal the potential for the Arctic Ocean to become a more viable route for international shipping over the coming decades. Opportunities exist for infrastructure development and commercial investment, resource exploitation, fishing, and tourism. Over the last 4 years, Task Force Climate Change, in consultation and collaboration with the broader governmental and private scientific communities, has concluded that ice conditions in the Arctic Ocean are changing more rapidly than first anticipated. This updated U.S. Navy Arctic Roadmap prepares the U.S. Navy to respond effectively. Hang on, I've got a phone call. I'm back. That was a hang-up call on Saturday night at 8:49 p.m. My second one this evening from an area code outside of my area. So, that's a message. So I will continue. And if anyone wants to read this article themselves, they can go to the link below. But since most people don't want to read, I'll just read it to you, and this deserves a whole show, like I said, because we need to understand that not only the United States, but Russia and China and lots of other countries already had plans for the Arctic as soon as it goes ice-free enough to start shipping and developing and doing all kinds of stuff up there. Over the last 4 years, Task Force Climate Change, in consultation and collaboration with the broader governmental and private scientific communities, has concluded that ice conditions in the Arctic Ocean are changing more rapidly than first anticipated. This updated U.S. Navy Arctic Roadmap prepares the U.S. Navy to respond effectively to future contingencies, delineates the U.S. Navy's Arctic region leadership role within the Defense Department, and articulates the Navy's support to national priorities. It outlines the U.S. Navy's strategic approach for the Arctic Ocean and the ways and means to support the desired defense and national end states. Our challenge over the coming decades is to balance the demands of current requirements with investment and development of future capabilities. We will continue to support the national security interests of the United States and prepare for potential Arctic region security contingencies through strengthened relationships with the U.S. Coast Guard, interagency, and international Arctic partners. The focus on prioritized near-term, today through 2020, and mid-term 2020 to 2030 tasks in this roadmap will ensure our investments are informed, focused, and deliberate as the U.S. Navy approaches a new maritime frontier. And that was signed by Jonathan W. Greenert, Admiral, U.S. Navy, Chief of Naval Operations. This was dated February 2014. And the different sections, there's the executive summary, introduction, purpose, policy guidance and United States national interests in the Arctic region, the evolving Arctic region security environment, United States Navy strategic objectives for the Arctic region, United States Navy leadership role and missions in the Arctic region, United States Navy ways and means for near-term, mid-term, and far-term operations. Roadmap execution, conclusion, and 4 appendixes, and the endnotes. Executive summary. The United States is an Arctic nation through the state of Alaska and its surrounding territorial and exclusive economic zone waters located in and around the Arctic Circle. And these footnotes refer to appendix, and so you can go all the way to the end, almost to the end, and it'll tell you all the definitions. For instance, this is important. The Arctic nations are the standing members of the Arctic Council. This includes Canada, Denmark, representing Greenland and the Faroe Islands, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, the Russian Federation, and the United States. And that's who makes up the Arctic nations. And so forth. This was interesting. Multi-year ice is sea ice that has survived at least one melting season or one summer. Look, they use the National Snow and Ice Data Center, which I use all the time. A shoulder season is defined as less than 40% sea ice coverage. That's a shoulder season. There's one more I was going to show you. 10%. They can, open water is defined as up to 10% of sea ice concentration with no ice of land origin or icebergs, navigable by open ocean vessels without icebreaker escort. So that's what open water is considered. So those are just some terms, but you can look for yourself. And I think everyone should be interested in this document because they're showing us right up front what they have planned. It's not hiding. It's not behind closed doors. This is in the works and it's happening, and they can't wait for the ice to melt. Okay, the United States Navy, as the maritime component of the Department of Defense, has global leadership responsibilities to provide ready forces for current operations and contingency response that include the Arctic Ocean. The Arctic region remains a challenging operating environment with a harsh climate, vast distances, and little infrastructure. These issues, coupled with limited operational experience, are just a few substantial challenges the Navy will have to overcome in the Arctic region. While the region is expected to remain a low-threat security environment where nations resolve differences peacefully, the Navy will be prepared to prevent conflict and ensure national interests are protected. Yeah, can't you just see a nuclear war happening up there between the U.S. and Russia? That's all we need. In the coming decades, the Arctic Ocean will be increasingly accessible and more broadly used by Arctic and non-Arctic nations seeking the region's abundant resources and trade routes. Due to the significant retreat of sea ice, previously unreachable areas have started to open for maritime use several weeks each year. The predicted rise in oil and gas development, fishing, tourism, and mineral mining could alter the region's strategic importance as Arctic and non-Arctic nations make investments. Despite this gradual ice opening, the region's frequent harsh weather and sea conditions are significant limiting factors for Arctic Ocean operations. This update of the 2009 Navy Arctic Roadmap provides guidance necessary to prepare the Navy to respond effectively to future Arctic region contingencies, delineates the Navy's leadership role, and articulates the Navy's support to achieve national priorities in the region. Navy functions in the Arctic region are no different from those in other maritime regions. However, the Arctic region environment makes the execution of many of these functions much more challenging. In May 2013, President Obama published the National Strategy for the Arctic region, defining the desired end state as an Arctic region stable and free of conflict, where nations act responsibly in a spirit of trust and cooperation, and where economic and energy resources are developed in a sustainable manner. In November 2013, the Secretary of Defense published the Department of Defense Arctic Strategy, identifying two supporting objectives to the national strategy: ensure security, support safety, and promote defense cooperation, and prepare for a wide range of challenges and contingencies. In support of national and Department of Defense aims, the Navy will pursue the following strategic objectives: ensure United States Arctic sovereignty and provide homeland defense. Provide ready naval forces to respond to crisis and contingencies. Preserve freedom of the seas. And promote partnerships within the United States government and with international allies and partners. This roadmap outlines the Navy's strategic approach for the Arctic region and the ways and means to achieve the desired national end state. Resource constraints and competing near-term mission demands require that naval investments be informed, focused, and deliberate. Proactive planning today allows the Navy to prepare its forces for Arctic region operations. This roadmap emphasizes low-cost, long-led activities that position the Navy to meet future demands. In the near to mid-term, the Navy will concentrate on improving operational capabilities, expertise, and capacity, extending reach, and will leverage interagency and international partners to achieve its strategic objectives. The roadmap recognizes the need to guide investments by prudently balancing regional requirements with national goals. This roadmap provides direction to the Navy for the near term, present to 2020, and we're almost to 2020. We're only a year and a half away from that. midterm 2020 to 2030, and far term beyond 2030, placing particular emphasis on near-term actions necessary to enhance Navy's ability to operate in the Arctic region in the future. In the near term, there will be low demand for additional naval involvement in the region. Current Navy capabilities are sufficient to meet near-term operational needs. Navy will refine doctrine, operating procedures, and tactics, techniques, and procedures to guide future potential operations in the Arctic region. In the midterm, the Navy will provide support to the combatant commanders, United States Coast Guard, and other United States government agencies. In the far term, increased periods of ice-free conditions could require the Navy to expand its support on a more routine basis. Throughout these time frames, the Navy will continue to develop and enhance cooperative relationships across the Department of Defense, United States government agencies, industry, and international allies and partners. And here's a map of the Arctic Ocean. This is probably one of the best maps I've seen. I mean, it shows all the islands and all the different seas and everything. So here's the North Pole, and we're going to have to scroll to see all of it. Here's Greenland, here's Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Finland. Here's the Barents Sea, the Norwegian Sea, Greenland Sea. Here's Svalbard, that's where the seed vault is. Here's Novaya Zemlya. Here's the Barents Sea. Here's the let's see, Vorota Strait. Here's the Kara Sea. This is Franz Josef Land. This is Severnaya Zemlya, and on and on. Then we have Canada, Queen Elizabeth Islands over here, and United States. This is Alaska. Here's Barrow, Alaska, right on this tippy point. This is the Beaufort Sea. Now we've seen recent ice collapse in the Beaufort Sea. Recent. I'm going to talk all about that tomorrow. But right now, here's the Chukchi Sea. Here's the East Siberia Sea. Here, this is where that East Siberian ice shelf is, where they're estimating the 50 gigaton methane bomb could be released at any time, and so forth. And this is all Russia, Siberia. So Russia has most of the coastline, most of this whole area, and so the nation that's going to benefit the most is going to be Russia. And I've got a very interesting video that came through today, and it's about Russia and how happy they are with global warming and how they're going to benefit, and they're already partying, and they're already building infrastructure and building up cities and this and that, and they're already counting their money. Introduction. The United States overarching strategic national security objective for the Arctic region is a stable and secure region where the national interests of the United States are safeguarded and the homeland is protected. The Navy's primary goal in support of national and Department of Defense aims is to contribute to a peaceful, stable, and conflict-free Arctic region. So it sounds like the Navy is going to be the police force up there. That's just what it sounds like to me. I could be wrong, but that's what it sounds like. The Arctic Ocean comprises a roughly circular basin and covers an area of about 5.4 million square miles, almost 1.5 times the size of the United States. Today, much of the Arctic region is ice-covered, limiting human access to particular times of the year. The expected continued reduction of multi-year Arctic sea ice over the coming decades will result in increased human activity in the Arctic Ocean. How much of an increase and in what types of activities remains to be seen. And also, how soon are they going to have McDonald's up there, is what I want to know. Not that I would go to McDonald's, but you know that McDonald's and Walmart and all of that will be on the list of things. They gotta have that. The rate of opening of the geography, the short commercial shipping season, the environmental complexities and limitations of operating in the Arctic Ocean, and present geopolitical trends in the Arctic region lead intelligence assessments to predict it is unlikely the region will be the site of state-on-state armed conflict. So they don't expect us to go into nuclear war with Russia over this, obviously. Disputes between Arctic region nations can be resolved peacefully and without military force, as demonstrated by the Russia-Norway Barents Sea Agreement. While the Arctic region is expected to remain an area of low threat, the United States does have standing security interests in the region, including threat early warning systems, freedom of navigation and overflight through the region, preventing terrorist attacks against the homeland, combined security obligations with Canada, and deployment of sea and air forces as required for deterrence. Maritime presence and maritime security operations. As the Arctic Ocean opens, the Bering Strait will have increased strategic importance. The 51-mile wide strait between Russia and the United States, with a depth varying between 98 to 160 feet, represents an important choke point for surface and subsurface vessels entering or departing the Arctic Ocean. Can you say nuclear submarines? The Bering Strait and across to and through the Arctic Ocean will become a more important security planning consideration as maritime activity continues to increase. Partnership building opportunities exist for the United States to cooperate with maritime nations as economic activity increases north of the Bering Strait. The strait has special significance for Russia since it allows Russia to connect her Asian and European naval forces. As the Pacific gateway for Russia's Northern Sea route, the Bering Strait will become increasingly important for seaborne trade between Europe and Asia. The anticipated increase in traffic through the strait provides opportunity for the United States to strengthen ties with Russia, promoting maritime security and safety in the region. For decades, Canada and the United States have been partners in the defense of North America cooperating within the framework of such instruments as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, and North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD. Homeland defense and homeland security are top priorities for the governments of Canada and the United States. The Navy will work with the Royal Canadian Navy to ensure common Arctic region interests are addressed in a complementary manner. The Navy will continue to support NORAD's missions for aerospace warning and control and maritime warning for threats against the United States and Canada. This unique and enduring partnership between the United States and Canada in defense cooperation is important to our mutual security interests in the Arctic region. The Navy and Coast Guard have a decades-long history of cooperation and collaboration. The two services have worked together in close partnership during times of war and peace to protect our nation's ports and waterways and to promote our maritime security interests overseas. The history of this collaboration between the two sea services acknowledges the distinctive missions, competencies, and cultures of each service. The combined efforts of the Navy and the Coast Guard in the Arctic Ocean will reflect this historic relationship. The Coast Guard and Navy are committed to ensuring safe, secure, and environmentally responsible maritime activity in Arctic Ocean waters and to promoting our other national interests in the region. The Arctic region's vast mineral resources hold significant wealth potential if feasible and cost-effective means can be employed for extraction and transportation to markets. Now this is what they're after. This is exactly what they're after, and they can't wait for the ice to melt. And this is exactly why there will be no mitigation, even if they come up with a solution to refreeze the Arctic or stop the ice melt or anything. It will never be implemented. Why? Because of this next paragraph. America's continental shelf holds significant energy and mineral resources. Estimates for the economic potential of hydrocarbon resources alone exceed $1 trillion in the U.S. Arctic. The Alaskan Arctic may hold the second largest oil and gas reserves in the Arctic Ocean after the West Siberian Basin, containing an estimated 29.9 billion barrels of oil, over 221 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, and 5.9 billion barrels of natural gas liquids. In the near term, mineral resources, particularly rare earth and strategic minerals, iron ore, zinc, nickel, coal, graphite, palladium, and many others will be more important economic drivers in the Arctic region. And this is not just for the United States. Russia has vast mineral resources that they are wanting to tap as well. As the Arctic region becomes increasingly accessible, multinational corporations will likely view exploration of these untapped resources as attractive commercial opportunities for long-term investments. However, the financial, technical, and environmental risks of operating in the Arctic region create substantial challenges for future production in the region. Whether the resources developed are mineral or hydrocarbon, they must find their way to receptive markets via shipping routes or pipelines. After discovery, oil and gas production in the Arctic region faces high capital and operating costs. The cost of building infrastructure requires companies to carefully consider whether production volumes and overhead will be commercially feasible to make these investments worthwhile. Given these current and projected developments, the Navy's existing Arctic region posture remains appropriate to address the near-term defense requirements of the United States in the Arctic region. During the time frames assessed for this roadmap, performance of most national defense missions that entail naval presence in the Arctic Ocean will likely be limited to those summer months when the sea ice is near its minimum and regional activity is at a peak. Exceptions to the seasonal variation in mission requirements are homeland defense missions. These missions require persistent domain awareness and episodic presence to influence potential adversaries and protect the United States from a range of possible threats. The Navy submarine fleet has decades of experience performing missions and exercises under the sea ice. On the other hand, the Navy surface and air forces have limited operational experiences in the region. The Navy will need to periodically evaluate preparedness for operations and conduct training exercises in harsh conditions as changes occur over time in order to ensure the Navy can operate in a more accessible Arctic Ocean. Now, I would think this is where Russia has an advantage because they're used to doing stuff in the snow and the ice and, in Siberia and everything. Regardless of the degree of accessibility, the Arctic region will remain a unique and harsh operating environment. Naval operations in the Arctic Ocean outside the Barents, Bering, and Norwegian seas require special training, extreme cold weather modifications for systems and equipment, and complex logistics support. Given the vast distances and virtually no supporting infrastructure, naval forces without specialized equipment and operational experience face substantial impediments. The areas that are seasonally free of ice, the ability of commercial and military vessels to maneuver will remain significantly hindered due to unpredictable locations and movement of ice formations, as well as the inadequate and incomplete nautical charting and aids to navigation in many portions of the Arctic Ocean. Anticipating the impacts of climate change, the Navy will take deliberate steps to prepare for near-term 2014 to 2020, mid-term 2020 to 2030, and far-term beyond 2030 Arctic Ocean operations. As security conditions change and the Arctic region becomes more accessible, the Navy will reevaluate its preparedness. The Navy must make targeted investments in Arctic capabilities to hedge against uncertainty and safeguard enduring national interests. And so here we have a picture. Let me get it here. On April 19th, 2004, The Los Angeles-class attack submarine USS Hampton surfaced at the geographic North Pole. Well, it doesn't look like much sea ice there if it's able to come up at the geographic North Pole on April 19th in 2004. That's kind of curious. So maybe the sea ice is not as thick as we thought, obviously. And so on and so forth. I don't have to read all this to you. I thought I would, but it's repeating a lot of stuff here. There are some things I want to read to you, though. There are three primary strategic drivers will determine the extent and timing of potential maritime and naval activity in the Arctic region: environmental conditions, economic interests and strategic resources, and geopolitical dynamics. Let's go over environmental conditions. The Arctic is warming faster than the rest of the globe. In the past 100 years, average Arctic temperatures have increased at almost twice the global average rate. But it's speeding up faster than that now. Average northern hemisphere temperatures during the second half of the 20th century were very likely higher than during any other 50-year period in the last 500 years. In 2012, the Arctic sea ice reached its smallest extent in recorded history, 1.3 million square miles. And so here we can see a very good depiction of the 2012 sea ice extent that was at its lowest in the melting season. The reduction in ice extent has led to an increase in human activity in resource extraction, fishing, and tourism. So they're talking about extent. They're not talking about thickness or volume. They're talking about how far out the ice reached. Extent, basically. Nevertheless, any endeavor in the Arctic region will have to overcome environmental challenges in the coming decades as the region warms and the ice continues to recede. With less sea ice cover, the ocean absorbs more heat from the sun during summer, increasing the temperature contrast between the warm, ice-free ocean and cold ice surfaces in autumn. This increase in temperature contrast could lead to the development of more frequent and more intense Arctic cyclones. We've already seen at least one or two cyclones this melt season up there. The stronger thermal contrast may also lead to increased likelihood of fog. The impact of reduced sea ice on Arctic weather patterns remains an area of great uncertainty. And they put together a whole team of experts from NOAA, National Ice Center, the Coast Guard, civilian academia, etc., to study and plan for all of this. That's in the appendix. This team of experts developed the following consensus assessment broken into near, mid, and far-term time frames. Near term, present to 2020, which we're almost to 2020 now. Reduction of Arctic Ocean sea ice is expected to continue, and major waterways will become increasingly open. By 2020, the Bering Strait is expected to see open water conditions up to 160 days per year, with 35 to 45 days of shoulder season. Remember, shoulder season was like 40% sea ice. The northern sea route will experience up to 30 days of open water conditions with up to 45 days of shoulder season conditions. Analysis suggests that the reliable navigability of other routes, including the Transpolar Route and the Northwest Passage, is limited in this time frame. There will be shoulder season route availability based upon ice age melt and movement. So they've got graphs and charts. They've got all these routes ready to go. They've got the Bering Strait, they've got the Transpolar Route, Northwest Passage, and Northern Sea Route all ready to go. Midterm 2020 to 2030. This period will see increasing levels of ice melt, increasingly open Arctic Ocean waters. By 2025, the Bering Strait will see up to 175 days of open water and 50 to 60 days of shoulder season. These figures increase to 190 days of open water and up to 70 days of shoulder season by 2030. For the Northern Sea Route, predictions are for up to 45 days of open water with 50 to 60 days of shoulder season by 2025. Increasing to 50 to 60 days of open water by 2030, with up to 30 days of shoulder season conditions. This period will begin to see greater accessibility of the Transpolar Route, which is forecast to be open for up to 45 days annually, with 60 to 70 days of shoulder season. Analysis suggests the reliable navigability of the Northwest Passage will continue to remain limited in this time frame. Beyond 2030, in the far term, environmental conditions are expected to support even greater and more reliable maritime presence in the region, meaning they expect it to continue melting. It's not coming back. The sea ice is not coming back. That's what they're saying. Major waterways are predicted to be consistently open, with a significant increase in traffic over the summer months. Yeah, cruises. The Northern Sea Route and Transpolar Route should be navigable 130 days per year, with open water passage up to 75 days per year. The Northwest Passage will be increasingly open during the late summer and early fall. Economic interests and strategic resources. The Arctic region has regained importance since the end of the Cold War, as the retreat of sea ice allows for the potential extraction of resources. Now, remember my Novaya Zemlya video? Well, the Kara Sea over there by Novaya Zemlya is the most radioactive sea in the whole world. And so that's what they're going to be going near or through. So there you go. Plus you've got a sunken nuclear submarine down there, and you've got radioactive cores, nuclear cores and waste and God knows what down there. So this doesn't sound good. The United States Geological Survey estimates undiscovered conventional oil and gas resources at approximately 90 billion barrels of oil, 1,669 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. And remember, natural gas and natural gas liquids, that's methane. Methane. And 44 billion barrels of natural gas liquids, that's methane. These deposits equate to about 30% of the world's undiscovered natural gas resources. 13% of the world's undiscovered oil resources, and 20% of the world's liquid natural gas resources. Now those are hydrates, gas hydrates, the liquid natural gas. It's methane. They want methane. They want it to get thawed out enough to where they can drill through the water down through the seafloor and get it while it's still frozen so that they can manage it and extract it and then heat it up and extract it. So as it's turning to gas, they can extract it from the water. That's what they want, because right now it's too hard to drill through all that ice to get to the methane deposits. In total, approximately 22% of the world's undiscovered hydrocarbon reserves could potentially be found in the Arctic region. In time, the Northern Sea Route, Transpolar Route, and Northwest Passage will offer shorter transit routes between ports in the Pacific and Atlantic. The 2011 Navy Arctic Mission analysis stated the following. Near term, present to 2020. Robust transit shipping will be unlikely in the new term, etc., etc. So they're exploiting minerals. They're looking for minerals. They're doing exploratory things. Midterm is they're starting more shipping. Starting to open up the shipping routes for seasonal things. And far term is the total exploitation of oil, gas, and mineral resources, and then they're learning to ship them and get them all over the world. So, you get the idea. So here's a map of the routes. The red is the Northern Sea Route. That's the one that's going to be open for more days of the year. And you can see it comes through from the Atlantic Ocean, and it comes up by Norway, and it can either go to the left of Novaya Zemlya or to the right, and it can go right into the Kara Sea, right through all that radioactive sea, because all that nuclear waste and stuff is right in here. It's dumped right in here. That nuclear submarine that sunk and the reactor cores and God knows what else, it's right in here. And then it goes on up right past the East Siberian ice shelf and out through the Bering Strait. Then the green one is the Transpolar Route, and so it's more in the middle and goes straight through. And then we got the Northwest Passage that will go between Greenland and Canada and goes through these areas, and I'm thinking they'll have lots of different ports so that they can, so that maybe like shipping containers can go up to Canada and load on here, and that would be, you know, they could go back and forth like that even. And then out through the Bering Strait. So that's what they have in mind. So this is chilling to see what they expect the ice melt to be. So here it was in 2012, the outline. The outer outline is 2012. By 2020, they expect it to be melted this much further in. This is at the end of the melt season. And by 2025, it's this outer edge of the blue. And by 2030, it's just a little tiny bit. So there you have it. I think you get the picture. It just goes on and on and on about what they're going to do, and you know how they're going to protect everything and all that. Sea control, power projection, search and rescue, they'll do that. Disaster response, etc., etc. So, the Navy's the place to be. And our conclusion. I always like to read those. The Arctic region, with its vast expanse, severe climate, and rich natural resources, is a challenge and an opportunity for the Navy. Naval security and international naval cooperation has always been critical components of United States Arctic policy. As the Arctic Ocean opens, these components will increase as activity rises. This Navy Arctic Roadmap update underscores the need to develop strong cooperative partnerships with interagency and international Arctic region stakeholders. It acknowledges the role climate change plays in energy security, research and science, the economy, fisheries, tourism, the assertion of sovereignty, and other related issues. To be prepared to address the emerging challenges caused by the opening of the Arctic Ocean waters, this roadmap recognizes that changes in the environment must be continuously examined and taken into account. The Navy will take deliberate steps to anticipate and prepare for Arctic region operations in the near term, mid-term, and far term. The key will be to balance potential investments with other service priorities. And then they have all their appendices. Here's everything they completed by 2009. They've been on this for a while. And then they have things they're going to accomplish in this certain year and that certain year. I mean, they've got it outlined. They've got it outlined down to the final little itty bitty detail. So, they know, and the powers that be know, and all of the leaders know, all of the government leaders know, they all know, and this is exactly why any information that the climate scientists try to bring out to Congress or political leaders or economic leaders or anyone else, it all falls on deaf ears because they can't wait for this sea ice to melt. And it's all about money and greed and power and exploiting the natural resources and getting in there and draining the mother dry of every last little drop of oil, natural gas, methane, natural resources, and everything from creation. It just makes me sick. When I saw this, I was sick. I was ill because, here we sit. And everybody, doing their activism and everything, who cares? They don't care. And they just let you do it because it gives you something to do and it keeps you out of the way while they're up there. They've got all their plans made. They have ISEX an international exercise held every 2 to 3 years by the Navy's Arctic Submarine Lab. They've been doing stuff. They've been busy. And if they've been doing this for the Arctic, you can bet your butt that they've been doing it for the Antarctic too. I just haven't looked for that. I guess that's next report. Okay, I've been going an hour. I'm going to briefly show you this video. This is called Global Warming is Increasing Russia's Profits and Pollution. This is an excellent video. It's short. It's only 12 minutes long, and it was done by Vice on HBO, and their show notes say, while many parts of the world are struggling from catastrophic effects of climate change, Russia is looking to capitalize on it, with the Kremlin driving a narrative that touts the economic benefits. They can't wait. They've got oil companies ready. They got one guy already building real estate, and people are already migrating up to the northern areas because they're so happy that it's warm in the summertime. They have booming factories, but they don't care. They don't care about the wildfires. They don't care about the methane. They don't care. So I don't want a YouTube strike, so I'm gonna mute this. But they've got really cool music, and the girl is talking in English, and she's speaking, and then the Russian guys speak in Russian, and their words show up here. The Russian guys show up here. He goes, it's not always cold in winter. The latest climate changes have brought good changes to our city, and when it becomes warmer in winter. So there's a port that they're talking about. That's the Northern Sea route. That's the route we were showing, the polar route over on the right hand side. Look at that sea ice. Man, that is melting. And then it's showing how low it melted down in 2016. And here's Russia. They're already drilling through the ice. They're already doing stuff. They're not waiting. Isn't that something? They have mining operations down under there too. It shows that. So I'm gonna go to, this is a really great video. Oh, here, this shows the proposed shipping routes and why they want to. Now this is the old shipping routes, right? Going, Russia would have to go down and around India and China and up to, but now, but see, it cuts off a whole bunch of miles to make that polar route from. Anyway, look at that. They're going right through the ice. Norilsk, Russia. This is one of the little towns that's making a comeback. They have a big nickel mining operation. They talk all about it, and the woman goes down into the nickel mine. Look, she's having to wear a respirator because you can't breathe down there. It's so toxic. The air is so toxic. And the people in the town, they can't breathe. But they don't care. And this is what's going to happen up there. The electrolyte consists of sulfuric acid, and they ventilate it out. Well, you know, that might be some of the sulfur dioxide that I've seen pluming up out of cams out of Siberia. It's probably releasing ozone and a lot of methane as well. Look at those trees. Man, that's dead. Maybe because it's winter. Look at that waste. It turned the water red. Anyway, I'm gonna fast forward. Oh, we're almost there. Oh, look at this. You're saying it's absolutely safe. The fish are living here. You like the family there. She hasn't turned green, so she's going to swim there. And it's impossible to breathe sometimes in that city. But in general, it's very good. Very good people end up there. You breathe in the gas and you feel great. Right. Okay, this is Oleg Anisimov, and he's part of their energy climate group. And so she's asking him about climate change and impact on the environment. And oh, he's speaking in English. Anyway, his response is down here. You're going to have to watch this video. He says, he's a climatologist. The problem of climate change is actually the problem of adaptation to climate change. This is not a tragedy. Certainly some places will become unlivable, but other areas and places will become more livable. So this is the Russian perspective, and most Russians don't believe that climate change is real. As you watch this video, they interview people and say, what do you think about climate change? Do you think it's real? And they go, oh no, it's all made up. And now I want to go to, there's one more I want to show. They go to the Kremlin. Alexander Bedritsky, he's advisor to the president, and she's asking him about the resources and taking them out sustainably. Listen to that. He says, well, okay, let's go back. This is important. I meant to write this down, but I just wanted to get this video done. He says, read the convention articles. It reads as follows. Countries must take action to lower the emissions of greenhouse gases while also not hindering their economic development. You got that? While not hindering their economic development. No one's going to limit their economic growth to the detriment of progress. So what that means is, to hell with greenhouse gases, to hell with the environment, to hell with everything. They don't care as long as they have economic growth and it can't be hindered. And that's what that means. So there you have it. There you have it, right there. As long as there is a demand for mineral resources, there will be extraction of them. So, And since the polar region, the Arctic, is very sensitive to climate change, the changes occurring are basically creating a greater opportunity to master the natural resource potential of the Arctic. And that's what he says. To master the natural resources of the Arctic. So, I will leave the link below so you can read this and listen to this article. And then, on an upbeat note, this was a video that was sent to me by one of my subscribers. It's called Giant Seafloor Craters and Thriving Fauna, Methane Seepage in the Arctic. And this is an interesting video. And this was a press conference that was given. In this press conference, researchers will reveal how structures such as giant craters signal marine methane release and what high concentrations of methane might mean for seafloor fauna. And these two participants were PhD candidates from the Center for Arctic Gas Hydrate Environment and Climate. So it's called CAGE, and they studied the release of methane on the seafloor, and they saw it seeping up and everything. And this one says that you see this green, she calls it a meadow, but that's actually worms, little worms that are all over the seafloor, and they live on methane. And she was all excited about all the different creatures that they found down there. So, and there's the worm. So see, just because it's becoming uninhabitable for humans and other creatures who like to breathe oxygen, it might be becoming habitable for creatures who breathe methane and carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide and these other greenhouse gases. So, I hope you enjoyed this report tonight. My name's Margo, signing off, citizen reporter. My website is margoshealingcorner.com. Time is short, folks. It's time to get your spiritual houses in order. Until next time, God bless, go in peace, and goodbye.